When I was called to be a preacher, and I dedicated myself to be a preacher, to preach, I told my best friend at the time, my very, very best friend, and I said, God has called me, I'm going to quit my job, and I'm going to do, and I told him, I thought he would be happy for me. And he looked me straight in my eyes and spoke to me the words which only best friends can say: "You are a fool." And he said it with sincerity. He said it with authenticity. And then he went to narrate why I was a fool. He told me, "You can't talk, you're quiet, you can't do this, you can't do that. Have you seen a preacher who is like you? Have you seen someone who talks like you?" Says, "You don't even know how to preach. You don't know how to, I've heard you don't know how to preach. You're just talking, you just talk, you don't know how to preach." Because those days preachers had to gesture, shout, scream. And I didn't know how to do that. So he gave me his assessment of me as a friend and said, "You are a fool to attempt this." There are people who are well-meaning, who know you very well, who are sincere, but very sincerely wrong. Their discouragement may be wrapped up in sincerity. It may sound like a good assessment of you. The only thing is that it doesn't quench the fire in you. It doesn't quench. After you've heard it, you still feel, "I need to see Jesus." Everybody says you can't, but still you feel, "I need to see Jesus. I need to build that business. I need to start this. I need to answer this call." And nothing quenches that. If you have an unquenchable fire within you, then God is stirring up something in you to do for him. And if it is God who is stirring up something in you, he will provide for you a sycamore tree. He will provide for you a sycamore tree. And for all you know, the reason why Pastor Matthew waited on the Lord and God said, "Rise," is because God had you in mind. Just you. Just you. I know many people are here, some are watching online, but God can decide to go to a place just for one man. Elijah went to Zarephath for one woman. Jesus went to the pool for one man. Sometimes God has only one person in mind. And God says, "You have felt limited for so long. Now I am bringing a word directly to you that you can rise above this. You can rise above this. You can rise above that negative reputation. You can rise above it. You may have been called a prostitute, but you can rise above it. You may be a drug addict, but you can rise above it. You may have done some terrible things, but you can rise above it. You have fallen 7 times, but you can rise above it. Whatever it is that you have experienced, you can rise above it. You can rise above your fears, whatever those fears are. Whether the fears of ghosts or fears of African witches or fears of demons trying to attack you, you can rise above it. Maybe somewhere at the back of your mind, you always feel, if things start working well for me, somehow they go wrong. But you can rise above it. At least I rose above it. I was told I was a fool. Don't think I look like a fool now, do I? Many years later, this friend of mine who told me I was a fool visited my church. After many years, church had been there. We were a big church in Ghana. He was in the service. I think he was in the second service. He was sitting somewhere in the overflow, in the balcony somewhere. And I preached, and afterwards he came with his family to introduce them to me. "Oh, this is my best friend. We used to be buddies, and we used to be this, and we used to..." I didn't remind him. Because at that time, I didn't want to rain on his party. But he was so happy for his wife to meet me and his children to meet me. And he said, that's my friend. That's my friend. We grew up together. We did that and we did that. I almost said, but you said I was a fool. But you don't need to rub it in for anybody. God sometimes does that just to let you know you did the right thing. And if God vindicates you, you don't need to justify yourself. If God settles it, it's done. You don't need to make anybody feel bad about it. But guess what? If I'd listened to him, he wouldn't have been in that auditorium. He wouldn't have said what he said. He probably wouldn't have anything to inspire his children with that afternoon. But thank God that I saw my sycamore tree. And I said, although I don't have all the abilities that preachers have, I can still climb with the grace of God. And I can develop what I have, and I can rise one step at a time until I rise above this. There are people here, God is telling you, you can rise above this. Don't let this limitation stop your vision from becoming a reality. Last Sunday I was telling our church that from childhood, or not childhood, I can say childhood, but from much of my adult life, I have not done anything that was easy to do. Everything I've done has been hard. Everything has been difficult. I've had to always do the extra. Nothing comes easy for me. I have to study hard to preach. Some people pick the Bible and get a word. I don't get a word. I have to cram and cram and cram and read and read and read and then make notes and notes and notes and analysis. Then I get 45 minutes sermon. I say, wow. And I hear people, they say, I just pray in tongues, and then a verse flashes in my spirit, and I just speak it, and I flow. I say, wow. God, why don't you just let it flash? But I have to study and study and study. Everything I have built, I built it at a time when I had nothing. No money. No money. I was telling them about when I got married. I had nothing. No furniture. Love will not give you furniture, you know that. And that girl decided to marry me, and I had nothing. And I had some old discarded church benches. Benches, not pews. Benches, African benches. Just 3 parts. 1 on top, 2 on the sides. Benches. I picked 4 benches. And I've always been a man of excellence. Whatever you take, you have to improve it. So I painted it white. You have to improve it. You can't keep it as it is. You have to make it better. So I just took a brush, got white oil paint, painted it 4 white benches, put them in my living room, if you call that a living room, whatever that room was. And visitors will come and they sit on that bench. It's never been easy. But I always believe that if God gives you a vision that is high, and you say, I want to see Jesus, I want to do great things for God, He's not going to do it for you, but He'll put a sycamore tree somewhere in your path, and He's going to give you the grace to climb at the level you can climb. It's not a tree that is beyond your reach. It is a tree within your reach. And if you are faithful to God in little things, you'll be faithful in much.